The All Black podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black become the best run teams in sport. To listen to this episode and all the All Black podcasts, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. This is the All Blacks podcast.
Kia ora whānau and welcome to the All Black podcast powered by SAP. The All Blacks play Australia in the first Bledisloe Cup test this Saturday at one of the world's greatest sporting venues, the MCG. To discuss this match and his own rugby memories of playing against the All Blacks is a dead-set legend of Australian rugby, 80 tests, winner of 2 Rugby World Cups, a breaker of New Zealand rugby fan hearts multiple times, none more so in the 1991 World Cup semi-final in Dublin. Welcome to the pod, Tim Horan.
G'day, Rob. Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's great to be here, especially this week leading into a Bledisloe Cup match where you guys are massive favourites, as you probably have been the last probably 20 years. But yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting and a lot to chat about.
Mate, about that 91 game, do you still get asked a lot by, Australian rugby fans or just rugby fans in general about that match and maybe that pass over the shoulder from Campo? Because I was 11 years old. I was one of those kids, All Black fan, probably like a lot of Wallabies fans who got up at, 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning or whatever it was and was hoping that our team were going to get over the line and make it through to the World Cup final. And you and your mates got in the way and it was probably, a pretty special part of, Wallaby rugby history.
Yeah, incredible match. And when you look back at it, a lot of people said it was probably the best 40 minutes that the Wallabies have ever played, that first half and the way we came out in Dublin, neutral territory for both the All Blacks and for the Wallabies, and to have that opportunity in front of an incredible crowd there that was, a lot of people. We actually stayed in the middle of Dublin that week.
Awesome.
And we just walked up and down the mall and interacted with all the Irish fans and trying to get more Irish fans on our side for the semi. And yeah, the moments in the match were pretty special. Of course, David Campese, that first try he scored when he virtually looked like he was playing under eights. He ran across to the left, ran around John Kerwin, scored in the corner, and then the second try over the shoulder pass where Michael Liner, of course, chipped ahead, and the chip was actually supposed to be for me, but Campo, of course, cut in front of me and picked the ball up, and then I just kept screaming for him to pass it, and I sort of had the feeling that when he was about to be tackled, because Campo hated being tackled. Whenever he got tackled, he used to throw the ball away anyway. So I expected the ball to come somewhere at that stage. And yeah, it was a moment that, as you say, a lot of people sometimes talk about it, that they were in boarding school and they were allowed up, as you say, at 2:45 a.m. to watch the game. There was one boarding housemaster that said, okay, anyone who watches the rugby, you're allowed to get up, but you can't wake any of the other boarding house up. So you can go in this room, but if I hear any noise coming out of that room, you're all going back to bed. So they were like cheering silently. They couldn't make any noise until I think we won the game, then they all cheered.
Oh, great memories. They're funny things, World Cups, aren't they? Like great 40 minutes for the Warriors. It was a week earlier that you just squeaked in against Ireland and perhaps why they're such strong supportive viewers in the semi. But it's to win a whole tournament, there's a whole lot of things that need to come together. Good luck and good management. And it's amazing, isn't it? How many things are needed to win a whole tournament, but I can imagine it's some of your best memories. And also yesterday, being the man that you are, wearing many hats, kicking off something pretty exciting, probably a good thing to put on not just Kiwi fans' radar, but rugby fans' radar is the Lions series coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. So announced yesterday in Brisbane, the British and Irish Lions series. And of course, there's going to be 3 test matches, one in Brisbane, the first one in Brisbane, the second one, and then the third one, so Sydney and also Melbourne. So but the great thing also yesterday was that the British and Irish Lions are going to be playing the 5 Super Rugby teams. So that's pretty important for us in Australia, and to make sure we've got that depth in those teams to compete against the British and Irish Lions. And then the one I'm really looking forward to, most excited about, is they're calling it at the moment Invitational All Blacks Wallabies 15. Now, hopefully in the next couple of months, we can change that to the Anzac game.
Yeah.
I think there's a few little bits and pieces you've got to get through of using the Anzac brand. I understand that. So, and hopefully Mark Robinson and all the Kiwis are behind that. So actually, that game's going to be in Adelaide in South Australia. And I think that'll be fantastic. If you get most of the Wallabies in All Blacks players, and probably it's going to be because the All Blacks are playing France during that series. So it'll be players like, might be Richard Mwanga, might be the Barretts, who are people who are playing offshore, and you bring them back to Australia. But you've got to have a significant number of All Black players there and a significant high-profile Wallaby players to make it work. So I was lucky enough to sit on the bench, actually, for 1989. There was an Anzac game against the British and Irish Lions. They called it the unofficial 4th Test match at Ballymore. It was incredible. I think we only had 3 Kiwis there. Might have been Kieran Crowley, maybe Fredo Botica was there, and there was one other.
Oh, mate, I love that concept. And I've always wondered, how good would it be to sort of put together a Tri-Nations type of side and go on a bit of a tour. Maybe, I know the old calendar's pretty clogged these days, but that would be cool, wouldn't it? Mate, a few warm-up questions before we get into some of your Bledisloe Cup memories. And we asked this of all the guests we have come on here, players, coaches, etc. Who was your favourite Wallaby growing up? We don't ask them Wallaby, we ask them All Black, mate. But yeah, who was your favourite player growing up?
Well, I'll give you one of each. It's probably so when I was growing up, I was playing a fair bit of rugby league, and then I played rugby union at high school. Didn't know a lot about the Wallabies. I was just playing rugby. It was great fun. I think I watched the '84 Grand Slam, and I'm 14 years of age at that stage, and I sort of, you're looking up at those players. But Michael Lynagh, when he was playing, I think, what a player he was. And then all of a sudden, I finished school, and a year later, I'm sort of playing next to him. So that was a bit surreal. But someone like Michael Lynagh, and what he did for the game of rugby, he saved us from so many matches over a period of time, and his goal kicking, but he's kicking out of hand. How skillful he was. So probably Michael Lynagh in the early stages. And then I suppose when you get that chance to play against the All Blacks, I used to love, wouldn't say I love playing against him, but for John Kerwin.
Brilliant.
JK was just an incredible athlete. I remember watching him a lot, and his footwork, and how he just reminded me of NFL players and the way he trained. And seeing that try in that '87 Rugby World Cup, that length of the field, probably still one of the best tries in a Rugby World Cup tournament, and what an athlete he was.
Mate, fantastic. For you, Tim, how did you hear you were first selected in the Wallabies? We always ask the guys that, whether it was on the radio, whether it was under the stand somewhere, whether it was in the paper, whether you got a phone call. How did it happen for you?
Yeah, well, back in the day, 1989, it was a bit weird. So I'd actually sat on the bench for the British and Irish Lions series in '89 and never got on. So
because that's what happened back in the day, wasn't it? You actually didn't get on the field.
You had to be stretched off to actually use a replacement. So I sat there, understood what was going on. I was only just 19. I think I just turned 19, and to understand the system. And then getting a phone call. Actually, my brother rang me, because back in the day, all the teams used to go up on what they called the wire back in the day. And that's how all the journalists saw the team. So I hadn't had a phone call from anyone. So my brother rang me, said he was a journalist, and said, "Oh, congratulations." I said, "Oh, what for?" And he's ringing me on the landline. Of course, there was no mobiles then, and I was at work. And he said, "Oh, I think you're in the Wallaby squad, the team, to play the All Blacks in 10 days' time." I said, "Oh, wow." I didn't believe him until then. About 5 minutes later, the great journalist Wayne Smith, who unfortunately only passed away 4 or 5 weeks ago through a heart attack. It was devastating news. Smithy was one of the best rugby journalists we've had for 20 or 30 years. But yeah, he rang me and he told me the same thing. And I believed Smithy, but I didn't believe my brother.
Oh, mate, many wouldn't. Mate, that's awesome. And we'll get to that first game. But firstly, hardest player you marked or played against. Anyone stick in the memory?
Yeah, of course, Jonah was incredible, wasn't he? To mark, not mark opposite Jonah, but have the opportunity with 7 other blokes to try and tackle him was incredible. He was a wonderful player, and I think he did so much for rugby off the field as well as on the field. And I had the chance to actually room with him when we played the Barbarians team together, and actually play with him in a test match against Scotland. There was 78,000 people at Murrayfield. 77,000 were there to watch one bloke, and that was Jonah, and scored 4 tries in that match. Was incredible. And I think just he was an athlete first. What he did off the field with charities and looking after kids, it was incredible. But when he was on that rugby field, I always thought once he took his 4th step, you were probably no chance to get him. If you got him before he took that 4th step, you were half a chance with a few other guys to get round one thigh and sort of hang on. But he was pretty incredible. And probably before him was Inga Tuigamala, who Inga the winger. Like those guys, when Frank Bunce and Waddle Little were playing in the centres and they'd run across field and bring a switch play back with Inga the winger, like I was looking at Jason Little, looking at Michael Leiter, and who's going to tackle him. But it's just a sad that how things go, and obviously with them not here now.
Oh, mate, it's just so many memories, and yeah, fantastic to hear you talk about. It's fantastic you got to play with him as well. That's awesome. Someone or a peer, Tim Horan and Jason Little, who tormented the All Blacks at times over the years. When did you first meet Jason, and what sort of character is he?
Yeah, first met him probably about grade 5 or 6, I think. I lived in a place called Toowoomba, about 2 hours outside of Brisbane in Queensland, and we actually travelled on a rugby league club team together, and played under 11s, under 12s together, played a lot of cricket together and athletics. So met him there, and he went to a different school in Toowoomba. I went to Downlands College in Toowoomba. He went to Toowoomba Grammar, so rival schools. We all played against each other for, right through to when you finish grade 12, and made a lot of representative teams together. And then we decided to go to the same club in Brisbane, the South Rugby Club, and we're lucky enough to win some grand finals there together. And yeah, just formed a good bond, a good friendship, and probably knew most of the time what we were doing on and off the field, but also on that translated to on the field, where you most of the time knew what Jason's strengths were and what my weaknesses were, and we probably matched each other a little bit. But a great guy, and he was an athlete first. He could have easily played 50 to 80 test matches for the Australian cricket team. He was a talented cricketer. Played the Australian under-19 cricket team. He was a incredible athlete, high jumper, had the Australian record, junior high jump record. But I think he chose rugby because rugby went for 80 minutes and cricket in those days was going for 2 days. So he got bored.
He was a bit of a joker as well. He tried to stitch you up a couple of times, didn't he? There's something I was reading about a snake or something. Like, holy heck, that's an Australian story.
Yeah. Well, we're playing club footy, and back in those days, in the early days, you'd play a test match on a Saturday in Sydney, and you'd be on an 8 o'clock flight to get back from Sydney back to Brisbane to just sit on your club bench. You weren't supposed to come on, but most games there'd be 7 or 8 Wallabies sitting on the bench, and you'd be on in the first 15 minutes. But yeah, one club game, he'd found this sort of 3.5 metre python in his backyard that morning. So as I'm out warming up for the match, they put this 3.5 metre like massive carpet snake in my kit bag. So as we finished the game, we come in, and I couldn't realise, I didn't understand why there were so many people in the dressing shed, because everyone was in on it except me. And I just thought it was because all the Wallaby players are back there playing and people want to say good day. So there was second grade there and third grade and a couple of fifth graders floating around. And then I'm just sitting there having my second beer, and everyone's going, oh, mate, go and have a shower, we need to have a shower. No, I'm all right, I'll just have a beer. And I thought, that's a bit weird. So when you go to have a shower, I put my hand in my kit bag to get my towel. And as I put my hand in to pick my towel up, I've actually picked the head of the snake up with the towel, and the snake's head's actually looking at me dead, but I still got a bump on my head where I hit the roof, and everyone just killed themselves laughing. And so I haven't got him back from that one yet, but it's coming.
Oh, mate, yeah, and it needs to be a good one, because that scares the hell out of most Kiwis, I'd suggest. That's a hell of a yarn. Mate, I want to talk a little bit about your debut, which is also a Bledisloe Cup game. Talk to us a little bit about it, because I don't think a lot of our viewers or fans will know or realise just how young you were. But talk about the match itself and perhaps what you remember of it, because it was against the All Blacks, and it's always a pretty special one, your first one.
Yeah, I remember in the day, that was the laws of world rugby. Then you were only allowed to get into camp 3 days before a test match. So we flew to Auckland. We trained inside the racetrack in Auckland for 3 days non-stop, but like fitness and hard rucking, and 2 sessions on the Wednesday, 2 sessions on the Thursday, a really 2-hour team run on the Friday, the day before a test match. And then played the test match. I was 19 years of age. I played at number 13. A different position for me, because I was used to playing at 12. I hadn't actually played for the Queensland Reds at that time, so Bob Dwyer sort of just picked me out. Playing Lloyd Walker was inside centre. I was outside centre. I was playing against Joe Stanley, marking Joe Stanley. Johnny Schuster was inside centre. Gallagher, of course, was fullback. I think Righty might have been on the wing back in those days. So I'm just running out thinking this is surreal. I'd heard of this thing called the haka. I hadn't really seen much of it. And I remember Nick Farr-Jones saying to me about 5 minutes before we ran out, of course he was our captain. And he said, Tim, we stand up to the haka, you face the haka. I said, well, why do we do that? Why do we stand up? He said, it's a tradition and you got to accept the challenge. And so I'm standing there going, what is this thing? And all of a sudden, then, at 30 seconds after the All Blacks doing the haka, they're kicking off and they're climbing into you. So, and I'm pretty sure we were into the match right to the end. I think it might have been 18-12 with about a couple minutes to go. The All Blacks scored at the end. It might have been 24-12 final score. And the game went so quick. All I was trying to do was make tackles, make a run, just do the real simple things. And it was a tough one.
Oh, mate, the first of 80. And it's a great game, isn't it, footy? And I think we still have that today. It's still a big part of the game is, you're able to, have a beer with your opposite afterwards and potentially, I think maybe you had a chat with Joe Stanley, was it?
Yeah, Smoking Joe. He, and
Legend.
it was strange because, he walked into the dressing shed as I could hear the All Blacks next door still singing their national anthem with the Bledisloe Cup, I assume, on the floor or drinking out of it. And just as they'd finished that, Joe Stanley's at our door. Those days, the dressing sheds were right next door to each other. And he walks in and he sort of looks around, comes across to me. I'm sitting next to Michael Liner and Nick Farr-Jones. And he walks in with 2 beers. And I thought, this is a bit weird. And then as he gets towards me, he starts taking his All Black jersey off. And I'm thinking, oh, no. Does he want to swap jerseys? Because I'm only going to get one of these. I'm only going to play one test. We've lost the game. And then he walked over and shook my hand. He said, mate, here, I brought you a beer. I'd like to give you my test jersey. And as I was just about to say, didn't really want to swap, he said, no, you keep yours. It's your first test jersey. Here's mine. And sat down. We didn't have one beer, we had 2 or 3 beers in the shed. It was a lovely gesture. And you sort of then pay that forward, moving forward. I think I gave my jersey to Lee Stensness, actually, down in...
Oh, brilliant.
Might have been down... in Dunedin. I think he might have played his first test match. So I walked into the dressing shed, gave him my first jersey and it said to keep his. So I think you just pay that forward. And Smoking Joe, I laugh about it sometimes with him. I said, mate, it was a wonderful gesture. And he said, he didn't realise I probably gave you number 21, not 13. But anyway, just laughed.
I mean, I think, like you say, that's the game, isn't it? That's almost some of the best stuff in the game. Not necessarily always what happens on the pitch, but some of those moments.
And usually that happens in amateur footy. I mean, it was amateur footy back then for us, but you don't sort of see that stuff happen much in test footy. It's happening a bit more now, where sides are after a test series coming in and having a few beers, because that's why you play the game at all different levels.
Oh, absolutely. Mate, I want to pick out another game in particular. It was 1990 third test victory at Eden Park. Now, the All Blacks had already wrapped up the Bledisloe Cup for that year. But the reason I pick it out is because you did get the win there. I don't think the All Blacks had lost a game for maybe 4 years. They were on a bit of a run. But I wanted to pull it out because obviously for people like me, that was my era, and we all remember, Phil Kearns giving it to Fitzy, and it still gets the odd highlight run, that one. But like, perhaps was that the start of something for you guys that was almost the win you needed to go on a really good run over the next couple of years? Because if you read some of the commentary from back then, perhaps if you'd lost that game, maybe Bob Dwyer wouldn't have kept his job and he carried on to be one of the great Australian coaches. The All Blacks hadn't lost for a long time. Did it give you a bit of belief to think, actually, we can compete and actually for the next couple of years, that's exactly what you did? Yeah,
1990, I was only 20 years of age, lost the first 2 test matches against the All Blacks, and you're thinking, well, and we were called, there was journalists in Australia, headlines in Australia on the back page when rugby was pretty strong in Australia, we're the woeful Wallabies. And it's a badge that we didn't want to wear. And it was pretty, in Wellington, I'm pretty sure it was quite windy. Rain was coming sideways, but we just played quite a strong game plan that got us across the line at the end. And leaving that match, then you're thinking, okay, well, World Cup is a year away. We had good momentum. We believed in the players around us, and that was probably the strong foundation to go forward and then win that World Cup in 1991.
Awesome, mate. So many games you've been a part of, and you're one of the Australian players who had huge success against the All Blacks over the years during your career. Best Bledisloe Cup memory?
I reckon it was there's a few. We were lucky enough to win a few Bledisloe Cups back in our day, and
You were.
it was pretty special winning the game to win the Bledisloe Cup in Christchurch in '98 was because we had such a good team together, and the way we did that and winning it away from home, and seeing a couple of blotches of gold supporters in the crowd, and to be able to have that Bledisloe Cup, took it back to the hotel in Christchurch, and every test win we had a bit of a tradition. A few of us would go and jump nude into a dam or a lake or something. We did that after 1990 at Wellington. We jumped into the Wellington Harbour nude at midnight, and tell you what, it was pretty cold. So we found a little creek in Christchurch. Is it called the Avon? The Avon.
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's called the Avon. Yeah. Not the cleanest river in the country, but anyway.
Well, we found that out, Rob, because myself, Chris Handy, and another player, we go up there and we jump in there at say midnight, trying to find some water, and we go to jump in, and Chris Handy, a former commentator, lovely fella, Buddha, and of course played for the Wallabies many years ago. He strips off and jumps in, but we didn't realise it was only about 1.5 foot deep. So
totally straight into the duck crap. Brilliant.
So it was good fun. And mate, I suppose that test match, winning that test match, but then probably the special one was going back to Sydney. I think it was a week later. We played in Sydney, and the big motivation we had there, I remember talking to John Eales before the game, that we wanted to make sure we won the third test match at home. As I said, mate, how embarrassing will it be? We'll have the Bledisloe Cup in our hands. Win, lose or draw after that third test match in '98. Doing a lap of honour, having lost the game. So that was a big motivation to make sure we won the series, won 3 in a row, but also have the Bledisloe Cup after a win, and whilst you're showing the crowd.
Oh, some fantastic players you're referring to there. Broke my heart many, many times, some of these guys and yourself. Mate, sorry to pull it out, but worst Bledisloe Cup memory? Is there a couple or maybe one in particular that slipped through the fingers?
Oh, I think 1996, I think it was in Wellington, I'm pretty sure, where our coach Greg Smith said to us, and it's probably the biggest regret I think John Eales has as a player, where we didn't face the haka. Pouring rain in Wellington, athletic park, running out. We didn't face the haka. We thought we'd do like Campo used to do all the time and go together in the field and just warm up. Why are we facing the haka? We didn't understand a great deal about. We knew the culture of the haka, but what it stands for and accepting the challenge. So we ran out there, and as the All Blacks line up to do the haka, we go to the other end of the field and start doing some ball drills. So we really disrespected not just the All Blacks, but the haka and the culture that goes with that. And then I think we lost 43-6 in the match. It was the biggest loss we've had against the All Blacks. And it was embarrassing, one, what we did at the start of the game, but two, how we let ourselves down. And I remember Frank Bunce getting the ball early on. He ran straight through me and other blokes. It was just Jeff Wilson was great. Justin Marshall scored a try. They were incredible. So that was probably something that haunted us for a long period of time. And we probably used that piece in 1996 to probably try and take us through to the World Cup in '99 and what we had to stand for as a Wallaby team and make sure we had our identity.
Mate, it's amazing. It's such a common theme from any number of guests, players or coaches that we have on the pod, that it's the losses you learn the most from. You know, winning can be a bad teacher, and it's those tough days that truly make you reset. It's fascinating to hear it's the same for you over in Australia as well. Mate, the test match coming up in a couple of days, it's at the MCG, and it is literally, perhaps one of, if not the best sporting venue in the world. So many fantastic things have gone on there. I've been there for Boxing Day tests. I've been there for rugby matches, been there for league matches. For yourself, fortunate enough to get in there and play a game there, be a part of it, be a part of a match. Is it different? What does it feel like? It's, tell us a little bit about the uniqueness of that, storied facility.
Yeah, the challenge is you're playing, in Aussie rules or a cricket ground that, the sidelines are a long way away from where the crowd are. And normally, when you play at Suncorp Stadium, you play at other grounds. And Eden Park's a little bit like it as well, that you're to get your bearings on where you are, where you kick to, where you run to, how far the sidelines are away from you is a little bit difficult. So I wouldn't say it's the greatest atmosphere to play in, even though there's going to be 85, maybe 90,000 people there this weekend.
Wow.
The crowd's away from you; they're not on top of you, so it takes a little while to understand that and get a feel for that. So certainly, the amphitheatre and the atmosphere will be incredible, but you have to adapt pretty quickly as a player, as a team, to get a feel for where the field is. So it'll be a challenge for both teams. Wallabies have been pretty lucky there over a bit of history. So I think they've won a couple of decent test matches against New Zealand there. So one, I think Matt Burke scored all the points, maybe 24 points. And be difficult this weekend for our Wallaby team. They've struggled those first 2 test matches, but it's hard to tell fans, but I can see it, but they're not too far off. But at the moment, we're just not seeing that.
Oh, totally. And I think I talk to current players about this and former players. One of the reasons the All Blacks perhaps have been successful over the last wee while is because of the rivalry that was created through the 80s and 90s, and the fact that they put so much energy into the Bledisloe Cup, and I think it's such a focus for them that they're not going to give it back to the Wallabies easy, and but at some stage they're a very, very dangerous side, and when it clicks, we often see that they do get some victories against the All Blacks, and when they get it right, they're hugely dangerous. So I wanted to ask you a couple of things. Firstly, you sort of touched on it a wee bit throughout the course of the pod, but one of the great things about rugby, isn't it, is the mates that you make. You've played all over the world, and I actually want to ask you a few about some of your Kiwi mates. There are a number of guys that you get along with, New Zealand footy players that you can call friends today.
Yeah, many. Had some great tours to New Zealand, and obviously I had 3 years over in the UK with the Saracens club, coached by Francois Pina, coached by Buck Shelford and his brother, and different Kiwis that you meet around. I mean, wild little Frank Bunce, great rivalry, but great friends off the field. I occasionally see them when you go to New Zealand and catch up. Good mates with Justin Marshall. Marshy, what a player he was. Obviously played against him a fair bit to the back end of my career, and what he's done for the game on the field. But also his commentary is fantastic, and you can tell how passionate he is when he calls different games. So those sort of people. I'm very good friends with, I'll probably call him a very good friend, but also a great mentor, a guy called Kevin Roberts, used to be the vice chairman of the All Blacks for many years, and of course when he ran Lion Nathan for a long period of time. So I see Kevin a fair bit. I see Kevin a couple of times a year. We always catch up. Stayed at his house a few times over in the UK, and he travels around the world. So I just think that link with the All Blacks and players and fans has been fantastic. And to have that time where, George Grieger and I represented Rugby Australia for Jonah Lomu's memorial at Eden Park.
Yep.
And like nearly 30,000 people at Eden Park was incredible to see what it meant for not just the fans and supporters of the All Blacks, but of sport in New Zealand, but also globally around the world, what that meant to Jonah's passing. And to see how passionate that haka was, whether it's a Buck Shelford and Marshy and everyone who was part of that haka around Jonah's coffin, was just incredible. So, yeah, great mates from when you play with them and you see them around the world, and nice to catch up with them. And I'm sure we'll see a few in Melbourne this weekend. It's funny, actually, Ma'a Nonu will be down this weekend in Melbourne, and he's actually playing with my son, of all people, in San Diego with the Legion. So they play together, good mates. They play a bit of golf together, but how times have changed.
Oh my goodness, that's outstanding, isn't that? Them and the Ryder rugby networking community coming together, isn't it? Fantastic. Mate, I don't want to hold you too long, so I'll ask you one more question. Thoughts for both the Wallabies and the All Blacks going into the World Cup? You touched on a little bit with the Wallabies and how you think they might be tracking, and also get your thoughts on the All Blacks as well, who, as someone who's very much finger on the pulse of the game, it would be great to know how you think those two teams are tracking into the tournament. Both, not different paths, different pools, different opportunities going into the Cup, but where do you think they're at?
Yeah, I'll start with the Wallabies first. Eddie Jones, time will tell this weekend, Saturday night, to see how they perform against the All Blacks. And then, of course, next weekend in Dunedin. Those two matches are important to see where the Wallabies are at and how far off they are, or can they get close to the All Blacks. Then we play a test match against France 2 weeks out from the World Cup in Paris. So that's our 3 test matches left. So Eddie Jones, he's got the good thing with Eddie Jones he's got players who are coming back. So Rob Leota back after 12 months out. Quade Cooper, Samu Karevi only played 2 or 3 games post their injuries. Angus Bell just back from a foot injury, hasn't played since the start of February. So we've got a lot of these players coming back. Taniela Tupou been out for 10 months, ruptured Achilles, just coming back. So that's what Eddie Jones needs. He needs all those players fit and healthy for the Wallabies to go deep. Yes, the Wallabies should make the quarterfinal. If you don't make the quarterfinal, we shouldn't be here. Make the quarterfinal. You're in a side of the draw, as most people would know now, where you're going to play England or Argentina or maybe Japan, depending on how they go in that pool. So you could get to the quarterfinal. All of a sudden, if you win a quarterfinal and you're in form, then you're in a semi. And of course, on the other side of the draw, the 4 best teams in the world at the moment, Ireland, France, the Springboks, and the All Blacks. So of those 4 teams, 2 of them aren't going to make a semi-final. So I think the Wallabies have got a good little run. Haven't got momentum yet, but I think Eddie Jones will get them fitter, will get some momentum, as long as we don't lose 2 or 3 key players. Samu Kerevi is important, Taniela Tupou, and Rob Valentini. Those 3 players really important. So, yes, we get to the quarters. A win for us is making the semis. That's where I think we're going. Once you make the semis, who knows? You look at the All Blacks. I said this 6 or 7 months ago. I think the All Blacks should be favourites to win the World Cup. They're my pick. I did pretty well last. I picked the Springboks about a year out from the 2019 World Cup to win it. I just thought their game plan makes World Cups. I mean, World Cups, you can play quite a simple game plan. You've got to kick well, kick your goals, play field position. Defensively, you've got to be outstanding. And then when you get an opportunity, you've got to be able to make it. So really the final's the first game of the whole tournament.
Yeah.
France versus the All Blacks. What a match that will be. So, and that may dictate, of course, who you play in the quarterfinals for both those teams. So, no, I think the All Blacks, I think in a World Cup, you need players. The majority of your team needs to be older and have some experience. So most of the All Black players, I'm not sure of the average age, but I would say it's high 20s. When you look at Barrett, Richie Mwanga, all those players, Whitelocks, that experience, and that's what England had in 2003. So I think the All Blacks will be very hard to beat. I'm liking what I'm seeing from them. I like the depth. They could lose 4 or 5 key players and still have that depth to come through. So it's going to be a wonderful tournament. I'll be there for 8 weeks, and my hashtag will be rosé all day.
Oh, mate. Awesome. Look, thank you so much. I know you wear many hats, you've got many things to do, so I appreciate you giving us a little bit of time. It's fantastic to get, a perspective from someone who plays against the team rather than for it. So I really appreciate it, and hopefully catch up with you at some stage. Appreciate it, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'm looking forward to seeing Saturday night how the Wallabies go against the All Blacks. And also, it's always great where we work at Stan Sport and Channel 9. We have a lot of supporters and viewers who are All Black supporters, Kiwi supporters in Australia, but also in New Zealand. So thanks for all your support, and look forward to Saturday night.
No worries. Cheers, Tim. Brilliant.
The All Blacks podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black be the best run in sports. Hosted by Rob Dunn in the Hargrave Street studio. Produced by Carl Thompson from Blue and Ginge, the podcast producers. Video editing by Mac Leesburg, graphics by Western Design, content advising from Andy Burt, and commercial manager for the podcast is Valeska Hoth. Follow the All Blacks podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts.